My name's Amata, and in this Red Gamer Tech video I'm here with the latest from the tech world in the last 24 or so hours. So what do I have for you? Well, there was a sprinkle of gaming news at the end, which of course I'll get to in just a moment. So we're going to kick things off first of all with some Intel news, and unfortunately instead of it being good news, bad news, it's just bad news, bad news. As the first one is a report that apparently Intel is going to have to delay patches for the Spectre next generation vulnerabilities, which we discussed recently. Then we're going to move on to H310 supply, as Intel is reportedly suspending it due to tight 14nm capacity. Then we're going to move over to ASRock, who have officially issued a statement as to what's going on with their GPUs, as there's kind of a bit of a he said, she said situation going on. We're also going to discuss the Nintendo Switch and apparently how Nintendo hate money. And then we're going to finish things up with something from Microsoft, who are busy at work building a new Xbox team over in Santa Monica. But as I said, we're going to start things off with Intel. So you may recall that recently we reported on the fact that what is now being dubbed Spectre NG, or Next Generation, which is 8 new vulnerabilities with a similarity to Spectre, 4 of which have been tagged as critical. Now, we did report that Intel were kind of working behind the scenes on patching these new vulnerabilities, but it seems they're not going to actually do the dates that they wanted to with the release of these patches. Now, this is thanks to a report by Heise over in Germany, that is heise.de to be specific, and of course we'll link the source in the description below. And they have some sources themselves that are familiar with Intel's patch plans. Basically, from what they said, Intel is not capable of finishing up these patches before the disclosure publication date of what these vulnerabilities mean and are. So basically what this means is they're not going to be able to patch these or get the patches ready in time for when we're basically going to learn exactly what is the dealio with these new vulnerabilities. So basically now what they've said is that the new target for the release of these firmware updates and patches is going to be the 21st of May, but they did also kind of stress, hey, we might not be able to make that date, and they have also requested that technical disclosure be held off until July 10th of 2018, and we can expect microcode updates at least before that point. So this is not brilliant, because according to the initial report by Heise, who were the ones that unveiled these Spectre NG new vulnerabilities, a wide number of systems would be affected, pretty much including any Core i processors, Xeon variants, as well as Pentium, Celeron and Atom CPUs, which, as I'm sure you'll agree, is a metric ton of people. So this is not brilliant that Intel are not able to release the patches when they had in mind, but hopefully it's only a couple of weeks delay. Obviously it is entirely possible that it's going to be longer than that, but Intel is saying at the moment, yeah, give us a couple of extra weeks, which, you know, if they can actually make that target, cool, but it's still not exactly, yeah, you crack out the party poppers, you know, when they've got a couple of extra weeks of people being vulnerable to these 8 new vulnerabilities, which of course we don't exactly know the technical details of, because, well, the details of how exactly they work, you know, how they're different from the original Spectre, that sort of thing, have yet to be released as far as I can see. So I guess fingers crossed that Intel get this sorted ASAP. But let's move swiftly on to our next Intel topic, which was regarding H310 supply. So if this seems familiar, then it probably should, because these processors, the H310 desktop processors, launched in early April of this year, so about a month ago, and less than a month after the chipset was launched, Intel have reportedly run out of supply, as it is of course fabricated on a 14nm process. Now, according to sources of DigiTimes, basically what they're saying is that their 14nm process capacity is basically too tight to support entry-level desktop CPUs, but they have also said that they are not going to be changing their plans for H310 to be made on the 14nm node. Now, this is going to have a significant impact for people who create desktop motherboards, because H310 is widely adopted by them, and obviously ongoing supply disruption is not exactly your puppies and rainbows, and apparently motherboard manufacturers have been forced to adopt B360 as an alternative, which is similar but does come with a higher cost. And apparently the supply of H310 is going to resume in July at the latest, so unfortunately they're just going to have to suffer for it due to this for the next few months. Now, what's also interesting is that their sources have speculated that Intel have suspended supply of H310 due to a manufacturing process change from 14nm to 22nm, due to the delay of 10 nm, which in itself resulted in tight capacity to 14 nm. So basically a kind of knock-on effect of like, hey, they had to delay one thing, which put more pressure on another thing, which just means they cannot support entry-level desktop CPUs as much as they'd like, which of course is going to have an impact on creators of desktop motherboards. Now, of course, you may recall that the Intel CEO recently said that we can no longer expect 10 nm in the second half of 2018, and instead will be 2019. Now, this is far from the first delay for 10 nm, so that news was met with groans across the planet, I'm sure. And this was due to basically Intel wanting to improve yield rates, which of course is important, but this has, of course, resulted in numerous things, primarily, of course, the H310 supply issue. So yeah, it's not exactly all coming up Millhouse at the moment over at Camp Intel, but let's move on to ASRock. So, as a bit of TLDR, if you've missed the kerfuffle surrounding ASRock GPUs, or their Radeon GPUs to be more specific, you may have seen a claim from Tom's Hardware Germany, which basically said that ASRock were being banned by AMD from selling their Radeon GPUs in Europe, and then I myself discussed recently how another source has said that's not the case, it's just because they want to target miners, and how they're basically having a minimum order of like 500. These are not for, you know, average users, basically, is what they were saying. These are for people who are going to be buying in bulk. But due to all the rumours and uncertainty and all of that surrounding this, ASRock have issued a press release, and they have basically said that they're going to be rolling out their new graphics card business in various regions based on internal planning. So the full statement reads, quote, "A leading global motherboard and graphics manufacturer, ASRock, announced entering the graphics card market with the Phantom gaming range, a strong lineup of AMD Radeon RX 500 series graphics cards in April 2018. Initially, ASRock will roll out graphics card business in various regions based on internal planning. Regions with first priorities are APEC and Latin America. Then ASRock will gradually launch the business in other regions. Thanks for all media friends recently putting attention on our Phantom graphics card business and giving them massive coverages." So, to put that in plain speak, essentially APEC first, or APEC to be more specific, and then Latin America, and then elsewhere across other regions, kind of gradual spread. So ASRock have finally cleared things up, because things have been very, very murky indeed, and it's nice to at least know what's going on, and to not be taking the word of sources, you know, disrespect, not throwing shade or anything, but it's always nice to hear from the company themselves, of course, when it comes from a source that can't be named. You're always like, okay, I've got my pinch of salt ready, I've got my huge vat of salt that I'm just going to kind of roll around in. So let's move on to the Nintendo Switch, shall we? As you may have seen, the details of the online subscription service for the Switch surface finally, and one of the things that we saw amongst those details was a Netflix-like library of NES games, which raised the obvious question, is the Virtual Console coming back? And apparently Nintendo hates money, because the answer is no. And a Nintendo spokesperson said to Kotaku, quote, "There are currently no plans to bring classic games together under the Virtual Console banner, as been done on other Nintendo systems. There are a variety of ways in which classic games from Nintendo and other publishers are made available on Nintendo Switch, such as through Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo Switch Online, Nintendo eShop, or as package collections. Nintendo Switch Online will provide a fun new way to experience classic NES games that will be different from the Virtual Console service thanks to enhancements such as added online play, voice chat via Nintendo Switch Online app, and various play modes of Nintendo Switch." So long story short, you are still going to be able to play NES games, but the Virtual Console itself, as we saw it, you know, on the Wii and the Wii U, is just not coming to the Switch, and I definitely think this is going to be a bit of a bummer for a lot of people. Now, of course, you can still play the NES games, but it is going to be, you know, what is available on this service, and I think it's also going to be down to whether or not the publisher wants to make it available, because obviously, you know, when it's Nintendo, you know, they can put whatever they want on there, but obviously there's a lot of third-party developers as well that may or may not want to do this, and obviously people just like to have it there rather than having to rely on a subscription service, because obviously, you know, you can play the NES games that are there on Switch Online, but the second you cancel the subscription because you can't afford it that month or whatever, all those Virtual Console games are probably going to just disappear, which is obviously why a lot of people just prefer to have them there downloaded and available to purchase, and to play at any time. So it's not exactly the end of the world, but it is disappointing. But we're going to finish things up with Microsoft. So basically what we have here is Microsoft is putting together a new Xbox team in Southern California to grow talent for first-party studios in order to create new IP. So they are, at the moment, hiring a full-time principal program manager to, quote, hire and grow internal studio talent to build teams and culture. Further, according to the job listing, the Santa Monica location will be used to, quote, build an ecosystem of contract and external employees for production scalability. And more about the role itself, they say the program manager will, quote, work with studio management, developers and key stakeholders in the creation of the product vision to help build a new franchise. And they are stressing here a lot that they want this person to have knowledge of how to build a new IP, as well as, of course, lots and lots of experience in AAA and gaming industry and all that sort of stuff. So basically this just shows a sort of really keen push from Microsoft to get more new IP made, to get that talent on board, because as great as the Xbox has been doing, and obviously the X has been a very, very good console indeed, they are definitely still lacking, at least in my opinion, in really killer game, like console sellers, you know, really killer games that make you go, oh, I really want to buy an Xbox so I can play X, Y, and Z games, and obviously that those games would grow and continue to be awesome the more the console is around, and obviously make the console just better to buy, because hey, you can only play these games on here if you don't own a PC, that sort of thing. They are kind of lacking in that regard. I'm not saying there's nothing to play, because that's silly and hyperbolic, but they are definitely lacking in really strong first-party IPs, if you ask me. And obviously they do have a few in their wheelhouse, but they haven't trotted them out in a little while, so I think it's definitely important that they focus on new IP, because they obviously cannot just keep relying on the same franchises, but they also need to think about building new franchises that themselves go on for like 5+, 10+ years. So it just kind of goes to show that they are very much aware of the issue, and obviously Phil Spencer himself has spoken on this personally numerous times. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean they're going to magic up a new IP tomorrow. You're not going to see it E3 this year or anything silly like that, but they are working on it, and it's going to be interesting to see what exactly comes out of the new team over in Santa Monica. So with all that said, that is me done for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.